The Atheist Debates Patreon project presents a debate review on the essence of debate, Matt Dillahunty versus Dr. Kenny Rhodes. Hey everybody, welcome. It's probably not completely fair to call this a debate review because I'm not going to be going through the entirety of the debate. I'm going to be giving like a top level view of things because there'll probably be several videos covering different aspects of this debate. Recently on Modern Day Debates, I debated Dr. Kenny Rhodes. The subject of the debate was, is there good reason to believe in God? And that's not what the debate ended up really addressing. And there were so many interesting and strange things that happened during the debate that I'm probably going to just address them separately. So I called this one the essence of debate. Those of you who haven't seen the debate, you should go watch it. There's a link already from Patreon to the Modern Day Debates video. But the word essence was critical to the debate, and so I'm going to use it several times here in a sort of punny fashion. Forgive me, it's a source of amusement to me. But this is probably one of my favorite debates, even though it wasn't particularly good, and there were a number of problems with it. And that might be the reason why I like it. First of all, I like Kenny. Second of all, it was a little different from other debates. And third, there are, I think, a lot of things to learn here, particularly in how we talk about certain things and the way we use language. So Kenny used the word essence, and when I asked him to define it repeatedly, he failed. And what I mean by that is normally when you try to define a word, you don't get to use that word in the definition, which is something that happened quite frequently. But if you just define the word with another word, when the person you're talking to is clearly not fully grasping what it is that you're talking about, you haven't really done anything useful. And this even came up during the debate. I kept trying to get a clear understanding of what Kenny meant by essence, and I wasn't getting that at all. So if you were to ask, what is essence? Well, it's what a thing is. This is what Kenny said. It's intrinsic nature. And if you went to look it up in a dictionary, you'd find that it's the qualities that determine a thing's character or a property or group of properties of something without which it would not exist or without which it wouldn't be what it is. Essence is a word that, by and large, most English-speaking people are familiar with and that we have some sort of understanding of. And this sort of confusion happens a lot because we all feel like we're understanding each other because we're all ostensibly speaking the same language. And so when we say a word like essence, we all have some version of that word in our head. But the debate was, is there good reason to believe in a God? And Kenny's case essentially, pun intended, was that yes, there are good reasons. They're not empirical evidence, but there are good metaphysical reasons because there must be something which combines things into their essential selves, something that serves as a grounding for the essence of things. Essentially, pun intended, told you it was going to happen, he's using a version of like Neoplatonic arguments about composites, that the arguments hold that we are more than the sum of our parts, I guess is a way to phrase it, and that the more is our essence, the thing that makes us us. And because we are made up of parts, there must be something, and in the case of theists, it is an intelligent agent with a design, that is putting those parts together and deciding, in the case of Kenny's version of the argument, what the essence of the thing is. The problem is, what more are we than the sum of our parts? Yes, we feel like we're more, and we feel like we're not mere meat sacks and chemicals, but what are we really? And so the thing that we're describing quite often when we describe essence is not clear. And so when I was asking Kenny to describe this, and I was coming up with examples like, here's a pen, tell me what it is about the pen that is its essence. And I'll get back to that in a minute. But Kenny sort of kept changing scope during this debate. What is the essence of a human? What is the essence of me? And there were a number of problems. And the first one that became kind of obvious, it's really easy for us to use a word, think we all know what it means, think we're all using the word in the same way, and then realize that one of us thinks the word is so much more than the other. I'm fine with essence being, this is what a thing is. Okay, cool. It doesn't really give us a lot of details. Oh, it's its nature. All right, but what do we mean by its nature? Are we talking about, is it the atoms that it's made up of? Is it the pattern that those atoms are in? And in some cases, Kenny would talk about the function of a thing as if that were part of its essence. When the function of a thing, especially when we're talking about things that we use, is not a part of its essence. It's not a part of the thing at all. It's something we do. If I grab a screwdriver and use it as a hammer, its function is now as a hammer. It doesn't matter that it was originally intended to be a screwdriver. I could use it as a pry bar, any number of things. There's nothing about the screwdriver that makes it essentially for using on screws. It can have many different functions. And so when we're talking about describing it, yes, we use the label screwdriver, but we can say, okay, it's a metal bar with a tip, and it has a handle and all these other things. We can start describing what its physical features are, what it is. And when Kenny talked about essence, he described like the essence of a unicorn, but he noted that that doesn't exist. And then the essence of a dinosaur, which used to exist but does not currently exist, although that's up for debate. And then there's the essence of, let's say, me. So we have the essence of a unicorn, and that essence doesn't exist. The unicorn doesn't exist. It's just a description of a unicorn. We're saying, if this thing existed, here's what it would be. That's our description of the essence, but there's no essence there. There's nothing about a unicorn that exists in anything other than an abstract concept in the mind. And similarly, when we talk about the essence of a dinosaur, we would be saying this dinosaur, Tyrannosaurus Rex, used to exist, and here's the description of this dinosaur that used to exist, and this is what its essence was. And yet now that dinosaur doesn't exist, so its essence is merely an abstract concept that we can share. Similarly, when we look at me, I do exist, and so here's the description of me that becomes my essence. But I kept trying to get to the point of, how do you show what essence is? Not how do you define essence, as this is essentially what the thing is, but what features, what qualities, what characteristics go into essence. And this is where Kenny was all over the map, because sometimes it was about what the thing's made of, but more importantly, and many times it was about what the function of the thing was. The point that I was trying to make in this moment of the debate, which I don't think I got across very clearly because there was so much confusion about the label, was essentially, okay, you seem to be saying that essence can not exist, even though we can talk about it. Fine. But doesn't that mean that essence then is not a property of the thing and is instead merely our description of the thing? That must in fact be the case, because if there is such a thing as an essence of a unicorn, that is an essence of a non-existent thing, which means that the original definition and the entirety of his argument is metaphysical mumbo-jumbo grounded in a contradiction, because essence cannot be something that exists and something that grounds existence if it applies to something that does not exist. If your case is everything has an essence and there must be something that puts these essences together, and your first example is that a unicorn doesn't exist, but it has an essence, so something that doesn't exist has an essence, but that essence doesn't exist, then that essence is a description that we made about a unicorn. And similarly, the analogy falls apart for everything else, because we get to the truth, which is we are trying to describe things. We are trying to communicate a description of what a thing is. And in doing so, we basically say, here's its essence, here's its nature. And we can do that in a number of different categories and at a number of different discrete levels. Like, you can talk about it at the atomic level. You can talk about it at a molecular level. You can talk about it at an organic level if you're talking about life forms and cells and And of course, Kenny objected to dividing things up into eukaryotic cells because that put him in the same category as plants. And I'm like, I don't understand how you can have this objection to science and pretend like what science is doing is somehow wrong when you're advocating for the essence of something. Now, Kenny made a big distinction and a little bit of a big deal about the difference between that something is and what something is. This is not groundbreaking. This is not a big deal. Essentially, the pen exists. That is, and then the pen has features or qualities, and that is what is. So a pen exists. That's the that is. Here's what the pen is, and that's the what is. It's just a distinction between its epistemic existence and its ontology, what its essence is. Ooh, I said essence. It's not the definition that's the problem. It's saying what characteristics need to go into the essence. But Kenny was fond of using language in an interesting way, something that I'll address in another video. But when I asked about the essence of a pen, when I said beyond its physical features, what is the essence of the pen? Kenny's answer was penness. The pen has penness. Now, if you don't bother to define what penness is, and you don't have a description of what penness is, you haven't done anything. And this was the frustrating point, to be sitting there in a debate with someone where I'm genuinely trying to understand what their argument is. I'm not getting all of it. I'm being told in a not quite not condescending way that I don't understand, which I agree, I'm not understanding. And yet later on during the Q&A, I showed that when asked a question, I actually understood Kenny's position better than he could when it came to answering a particular question from his perspective. Talk about straw manning your opponent's position. So let's set aside penness for a minute and talk about chairness for a minute. I'm sitting in a chair right now. We talked about a chair during this debate when we talked about the essence of what something is. And there is this notion that it's something designed for you to sit on. The problem is you may not recognize everything that is a chair as an intended seat. There are some rather strange and artistically designed chairs that don't immediately look like a chair or read as a chair to us. You can say, wow, that's kind of strange. What is that thing there? And somebody says, oh, it's a chair. And the second they tell you it's a chair, now you know this is something that is designed to be sit on. But not every chair is something you're going to recognize as a seat, and not everything that you can sit on or even frequently sit on is something that was intentionally designed to be a seat. If you look at some of the outdoor amphitheaters, quite often they will have rocks that weren't even necessarily carved into seats. It's just things that people sit on. It became kind of a natural amphitheater. You could do that. Similarly, if you look at a pen, because I can't get away from the pen, it's just the process is a natural progression from drawing in the ashes and the dirt to painting with ashes and dirt to smudging with chemicals that stain more permanently than ashes and dirt, and then making gradual improvements until you find something that writes smoothly in the modern sense. And now it is a pen. After all, once upon a time, a pen was just a feather taken from a bird with a slit cut in it, dipped into some ink. What is it about that that makes it a pen? Our use of it. It didn't start off as a pen. It was a plume, a feather from a bird. We took it and made it a pen. And because we took it and made it a pen, that caused us to make advancements and changes to the pen so that we get something right better. And then we get modern pens that you just recognize, it's a pen. And so it is a cheat, and it is an admission of failure in a debate talking about the essence of something. When I'm asking, what is it about this pen that is its essence, to just say it's penness, as if everybody should understand it. This is the problem with what Kenny's doing and what many of us do all the time, which is we assume that our intent with a particular bit of language is also what is being received by the listener. And that if I just say, oh, I'm talking about its essence, everybody knows what I mean. Well, to some extent, that's true, that we know to some degree what we mean by essence. But when we get down to brass tacks and we say what features and qualities should count as essence, to say they are the property of the thing, there's nothing about this feather that has a property in and of itself that is penness, and yet that's exactly how it ended up being used. Even the ill-defined penness he was reaching for is something that has changed through time. Now, there's a lot of other things that I want to hit in this debate, including a statement from him about how to tell whether or not God was revealing himself to you that I think is separate from the debate, even though it was part of the debate, and incredibly telling. But in the end, for this debate, we didn't get a single good reason to believe in a God. We didn't even get a good reason to believe in Kenny's version of essence as if it was a real thing separate from and yet a part of the items in question. Instead, it was apparently nothing more than an abstraction, labels describing things, often describing things that aren't a part of the object at all, like their function or how we're using them, and describing things that aren't real. Kenny did not present a case for anything. He avoided questions. He repeatedly answered at the beginning of the Q&A, no matter what the question was, he just answered with, God is logically necessary, even if that had absolutely nothing to do with the question. Like the first three, I think, of the first four questions were answered with God is logically necessary. And there were a number of answers, which I'll actually address in a future video, that I'm not even sure were cogent, complete thoughts. And when he started talking about being tired and recently suffering a heat stroke, I believed him because there were a number of things that just weren't making sense, and it just really felt like he was off. Now, I hope after he recovers that we can actually get to the essence of a proper debate on whether or not there are good reasons to believe in a God, because this debate didn't even come close to a whisper of that sort of case. But Kenny asked me to speak to his class, and it looks like we'll interact again in the near future. So in addition to another video or two on the fine points from that debate, maybe we'll get some clarity on other points as well. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.